take our time. Let's see if a few people join. Welcome to Stony Progressive. For those of you checking me out later, as 85% of people do, good evening, good afternoon, good whatever. Got a few things on the docket today. Gonna do the White House, our Jen Psaki farewell tour, as she gets ready to leave for MSNBC contract. Work for the government, get a nice big fat check afterwards. That is the way DC works, right? You work for DC, you get a big fat check somewhere along the lines. Um, we're also going to be doing my first try at An0maly. I've never watched him before, so I was going to do that second. Go over the protests and rallies for the week. First check at TimeGhost history. Then going to go over the petrodollar and how China discussing trading with Saudi Arabia could completely blow up our economy. Ooh. Yeah. So that's quite a bit tonight. I am taking some pills right now because I had oral surgery yesterday. My face is still sore, and I don't know how long I'm going to be talking tonight. Um, I do have more articles to go over than news clips, so it requires a lot of talking. So the show might be a little bit more 2.5, 3 hours instead of 3.5, 4 hours, but it'll be more information. So, hooray for everybody! Oh, already. So yeah, I took the Motrin. Hope that'll keep me through the show, and away we go. No, I'm trying to chill for a second while we see if some people join. I don't have a lot of social media, so if you're checking this out, please go ahead and share it on yours. Um, yeah, see if some people join us. Like I said, I'm going to take my time on this. I want to share it out. The few places I do have a Twitter account. Let's watch a little Jen while we smoke a joint and share this out, guys. I'll actually slow it down a little bit. I had it at 1.5 when I watched her first. It's her farewell tour. We have to enjoy these last sarcastic, snarky remarks, right? We have to take them all in. So let's watch Jen while we smoke a joint, share this out on social media, and then we'll take a deep dive into some more things after this segment.
For all of you at the top. Today, Vice President Harris and administration officials announced the Biden-Harris Action Plan for building better school infrastructure. By leveraging funds from the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the American Rescue Plan, this action plan will activate the entire federal government to support students' health and learning, from upgraded HVAC systems to electric school buses, from on-site solar energy installations to safe routes to school. Also wanted to note, in light of the President's event on trucking, a couple of details or facts for all of you. 2021 was the best year for trucking growth, jobs growth since 1994, and December 2021 through February of 2022 was the best 3-month stretch for long-distance truck hiring since the 1990s. Thanks to the efforts of the Department of Transportation, we doubled the issuance of commercial driver's license issuances in January and February 2022 compared to the prior January and February of 2021. And over 100 employers, including Domino's, Frito-Lay, and UPS, launched registered apprenticeship programs in the past 90 days. This could result in more than 10,000 additional apprenticeships nationwide, which of course get more people, more truckers trained, more trucks on the road, more goods moving around and onto shelves across the country. Also wanted to note, I think you all saw this, but just to confirm for all of you, tomorrow the President and Vice President will be joined by former President Obama to highlight how the Affordable Care Act continues to lower health care costs for American families. This will be the first time former President Obama returns to the White House since leaving office. Since we've taken office, since President Biden has entered office, we've taken big steps to reduce health care costs and expand access to health care for the American people. And how President Biden and former President Obama both see the Affordable Care Act is an example, a shining example of how government can work for the American people. Not only did it ensure that millions of people had access to affordable health care, but it has been an opportunity to build on that and make changes and make improvements over the course of time, which of course is what they will talk about tomorrow. But even since the president took office, through the American Rescue Plan, we lowered premiums for 9 million Americans, the biggest expansion of affordable health care since the ACA. We've made affordable health coverage more accessible during the pandemic through the opening of the special enrollment period, which enabled nearly 3 1.3 million Americans to have access to newly sign up for coverage under the ACA. And President Biden has overseen the most successful open enrollment period in history last year, with a historic 14.5 million Americans signing up for ACA coverage, and another million people signing up for the basic health care program. So tomorrow they'll announce more steps. I'll also note, as they did every week when former President Obama was president and President Biden was vice president, that's a mouthful, they will have lunch tomorrow as well, as they used to do on a weekly basis. I would note they continue to talk regularly. They are real friends, not just Washington friends, and so I'm sure they will talk about events in the world as well as their families and personal lives. So I'll try to get around the room as best as I can, but Chris, why don't you kick us off?
So one question on Title 42. Some Republican attorneys general are suing the administration over the plan to lift it. What is the administration's response? And is the administration concerned that this would end up blocking the push to lift the order?
Well, on the lawsuit itself, I'd of course refer you to the Department of Justice. They would be overseeing any steps there. But broadly speaking, I think it's important to note for any critics and any lawsuits that Title 42 is a public health directive. It's not an immigration, migration enforcement measure, and the decision on when to lift Title 42 was made by the CDC. And our objective from here, and this is why we have the implementation period over the next several weeks, continues to be to ensure we are increasing our resources, surging personnel and resources to the border, improving border processing, implementing COVID-19 mitigation measures, and continuing to work with other countries in the Western Hemisphere to manage migration and address root causes. But this is, again, a healthcare measure, a health measure determination, and not an immigration policy. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. Let me ask you the question I was going to ask Jake, which is that as part of this new effort to ramp up sanctions, is the administration going to be ramping up pressure on China and India to abide by existing sanctions? And what does that look like? I know Dilip Singh was just in India. You're going to intensify some criticism of them and others who haven't done so.
Well, certainly our expectation and our public and private message will continue to be that every country should abide by the sanctions that we have announced and that we are implementing around the world. As you noted, so let me start with India, if that's okay. As you noted, Dilip Singh, our Deputy National Security Advisor, was just there. I would note that, just given some of the reporting, energy payments are not sanctioned. That's a decision made by each individual country, and we've been very clear that each country is going to make their own choices, even as we have made the decision and other countries have made the decision to ban energy imports. What Dilip did make clear to his counterparts during this visit was that we don't believe it's in India's interest to accelerate or increase imports of Russian energy and other commodities. Right now, just to give everybody the full scope of it, India's imports of Russian energy represent only 1% to 2% of their total energy imports. So while he explained both the mechanisms of our sanctions and reiterated that any country or entity should be abiding by those, we also made clear that we'd be happy to be a partner in reducing their reliance or even their small percentage of reliance on that. As it relates to China, I know that Jake spoke to this the last time he was here. Our assessment hasn't changed on that front, but we continue to convey the same expectations of abiding by sanctions.
And then on COVID funding, the reports that the Republicans and Democrats in the Senate are nearing a deal on a $10 billion package that doesn't include global aid. Is a package of that size and that doesn't include global vaccine assistance something that President Biden could sign into law?
Well, let me first say that we are encouraged by the strong progress that Congress is making in finalizing a deal, not yet final, but finalizing a deal to fund some of our most very urgent COVID response needs. I would remind everyone that what we had requested was $22.5 billion, not $10 billion, in order to achieve a number of objectives, including securing enough booster shots for the general population, purchasing more monoclonal antibodies and Evusheld for the immunocompromised, maintaining our testing capacity, getting shots in arms abroad, to go to your question, and funding for variant-specific vaccines if needed. So this does not, will obviously not meet all of those needs, dire needs in this country, and certainly our objective would continue to be to press for funding for international support for ensuring we continue to be the arsenal of vaccines in the world, regardless of what this final package looks like. I'd note that the reason that's so important is not just because of the need to have vaccine doses. It's because we need to, there are countries around the world who are refusing our vaccine doses because they don't have the mechanisms, the know-how, and the capacity to be able to distribute those doses. So that funding that we've been requesting, we'll continue to press for, would be accounting for that as well. Can I note one more last thing? Sorry, I've got a lot on this. I would also note that as you're watching Congress and the Senate, there are a wide number of Republicans who have called for funding for and called for ensuring that we continue to be the arsenal of vaccine distribution around the world. They don't use that exact phrase, but basically that's the basics, including Senator Graham, who said, I support the effort just in June of last year of the Biden administration to donate vaccines to at-risk populations throughout the world. Senator Portman said that he is pleased that legislation, this is last summer, that has passed, that the committee at the time would help ensure that domestic supply is part of what we're doing in domestic supply, access to domestic supply is part of our global vaccination strategy. Senator McConnell said it would be terribly unfortunate if a supplemental COVID-19 funding package did not include international vaccines. So I'm not going to prejudge where they will all be on this or future legislation. I would just note that if we want to continue to be providing to the world, we need money, and that's a case we will continue to make. Go ahead.
Ukraine's prosecutor general just suggested that there's more gruesome evidence of the aftermath of Russia's occupation around Kyiv, saying that the worst situation may in fact be in Borodanka. I apologize if I don't pronounce that correctly, but do you have a sense of how widespread this may be in the Kyiv region? I mean, I know Jake just said that you're going to continue to see these kinds of brazen attacks, but what more can you tell us about some of these other areas that we may be hearing about?
I don't have a new or additional assessment. This is something we will continue to gather information on, and Jake obviously outlined the number of ways we will do that, both by intel gathering, working with our partners and allies around the world. But I would also note, Mary, to go back to your earlier question, that the fact that we're seeing these horrific images from Bucha around now around the world, thanks to all of your broadcasts and many global broadcasters. I mean, we have access. There's access to this area. There's not access to a lot of the areas around Mariupol and other areas of Ukraine where we have not even begun to see the impact of the atrocities and the impact of what, as Jake said, President Putin and the Russians made clear they were intending to do from the outset of the war. So while I don't have additional assessment, I would just note that we should brace ourselves for what we may see as we gain greater access and learn more about what atrocities they've implemented. Go ahead.
Thank you. The U.S. ambassador to the UN says that tomorrow she's going to go to New York and seek Russia's suspension from the Human Rights Council. Is that the direction of the president?
Yes. The president does not believe. He believes it's ludicrous for Russia to be a member of the Human Rights Council, and certainly the ambassador spoke to this today, and while she was on her overseas trip, and she will.
If we are, then what the hell's the difference?
Russia is revising
what the
its
hell?
war
I
aims.
push pause.
Russia is
Fuck's
repositioning
sakes.
its forces to concentrate its offensive.
That's fair.
Well, I would note that we're not the governing. Now around the world, thanks to all of your broadcasts and many global broadcasters. I mean, we have access. There's access to this area. There's not access to a lot of the areas around Mariupol, areas of we have not even begun to see the impact of the atrocities and the impact of what, as Jake said, President Putin and the Russians made clear they were intending to do from the outset of the war. So while I don't have additional assessment, I would just note that we should brace ourselves for what we may see as we gain greater access and learn more about what atrocities they've implemented. Go ahead.
Thank you. The U.S. ambassador to the UN says that tomorrow she's going to go to New York and seek Russia's suspension from the Human Rights Council. Is that the direction of the president?
Yes. The president does not believe. He believes it's ludicrous for Russia.
Again, who the fuck are we to say that it's ludicrous for Russia not to be on the council? We are the most ludicrous thing to be on the council. So yeah. I don't know where our spot in history books can say that we can fucking say, no, you can't be on human rights. We don't do anything wrong, right guys? Come on. Bullshit artist. No wonder she's going to MSNBC.
to be a member of the Human Rights Council. And certainly the ambassador spoke to this today, and while she was on her overseas trip, and she will continue to make the case in her role when she returns to New York.
Why not seek to permanently expel them?
From the Human Rights Council, I would point you to our UN ambassador on what specific steps, but obviously removing them would be the next appropriate step in the process. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jen. So President Biden is talking about putting Putin on a wartime trial. Does he expect Putin to turn himself in to stand trial, or does he think somebody's going to have to go into Russia and arrest him?
Oh, that's just ridiculous, right? Oh, and the question's not ridiculous. You have to ask, but Jesus. We know they're not going to do that. That's not going to happen. That's not even a thing. We couldn't even go in and arrest freaking any of the other actual leaders that needed to be arrested. How are we going to arrest somebody that... We haven't arrested anybody. That's not a thing. So, we couldn't get Gaddafi. We couldn't get Osama bin Laden. Like, come on.
Well, without getting into the mechanisms,
We
which
kill
I know
them,
were
we
the
don't
good
arrest them.
questions everybody was asking our national security advisor, there is precedent in the past of how this process can work. We're not going to prejudge what the process would work or what steps would be taken through an international legal process. So that's not quite where we're at right now, Peter, and I can't give you a sense of the mechanisms of if convicted, what would happen.
Okay. A question about college sports. In some places like the Ivy League now, there are...
Oh, we really had to go there. I mean, I've watched this already. I knew we were going to go there, but we really had to... I was cussing last time. I'm going to just try to be really calm about it this time. Really? Really?
biological males competing against women. Does the White House think that is fair?
Well, I would note that we're not the governing body for the NCAA or any other system out there that I believe you're probably
Jackass.
referring to the case over in swimming in the NCAA. We understand how important sports are to student athletes across the country, but the NCAA obviously puts these policies in place. What I would say, Peter, if we look at this broadly, is that we celebrated International Transgender Day of Visibility last week with a slate of new actions to ensure we are continuing, we continue to protect the dignity and identity of all.
I think that answers your question, you dick. Massive dick. He's Fox News, so I can call him that, right? I mean, that's allowed. We all know Fox News isn't actually news. Oh, what a massive dick. Oh, what a fucking dick. Alright, yeah. So, yeah. No, that's not the case.
All Americans. And at a moment where we're looking at and we're seeing increased mental health issues related to young people, especially LGBTQ plus young people, we're providing additional funding and resources to address this issue, and we hope all leaders can focus on those important issues and the impact on many of these young people who are impacted across the country.
And then what about this new law in Florida? At what age does the White House think that students should be taught about sexual orientation and gender identity?
Well, I would.
Jesus Christ, is that the only subject you're going to breach today, dude? You're just dumb. Really, dude? I'm already over your shit. I'm going to watch this whole thing still, but man, what a... What a dick.
First of all, Peter, we have spoken to the Don't Say Gay bill in the past, I believe is what you're referring to, and made clear that as we look at this law, what we think it's a reflection of is politicians in Florida propagating misinformed, hateful policies that do absolutely nothing to address the real issues. The Department of Education is well positioned and ready to evaluate what to do next, and its implementation, whether its implementation violates federal civil rights law. But I would note that parents across the country are looking to national, state, and district leaders to support our nation's students, to ensure that kids are treated equally in schools, and that is certainly not, this is not a reflection of that.
And so just the last one, so if you guys oppose this law that bans classroom instruction about sexual orientation and gender identity in K through 3, does the White House support that kind of classroom instruction before kindergarten?
Do you have examples of schools in Florida that are teaching kindergartners about sex?
Yeah, you prick. God, I'm sick of that fucking It's such a fucking... I hate this fucking argument. I'm really getting annoyed. I've already talked about this subject plenty. And, yeah.
Education?
Asking for the president's
Well, I think
opinion
that's
about
I think that's a relevant question, because I think this is a politically charged, harsh law that is putting parents and LGBTQ plus kids in a very difficult, heartbreaking circumstance. And so I actually think that's a pretty relevant question. Go ahead.
On the Ukraine atrocities, Jake referenced some of the images that all our news organizations have been gathering. Is the administration able to gather other and document other cases that you have assembled that we may not be aware of in terms of this collection of data on war crimes, rapes, murders, things like that, that we have not yet seen? Is there more data?
On the
that-
ground, you mean? So I'm sure you've seen, Kelly, that the EU announced their intention to send a team there, which obviously hasn't happened yet, but that was an announcement made earlier today. Certainly through intel gathering, we likely do have access to different types of information. We've declassified a range of information over the course of time, which I would expect we continue to do. We will continue to do. Right now, I can't give you an assessment of what we may know that you don't know, but I would just say and reiterate what Jake said.
I can't give you an assessment because we're not trying to give you that much information. Most of what we do is talk around you. But, just in case you're wondering, we will be leaking tiny little bits way behind what is actually leaked if you look at independent sources. So just go ahead and look at independent sources. They'll probably give you information better than we ever will. And on that note,
We're going to use every tool at our disposal we can. Some of that is through intel channels. Some of that is, of course, working with our counterparts around the world to gather as much data and information as we can. It is difficult to go back to an earlier question, given that we need access, or even our European friends and partners need access to gather, but it is vital, it is important, and we are going to do everything we can to support those efforts from here.
And if the Russians are able to take some territory in the east and have greater stability of their control there, would it ever be the U.S. position that that could be a stable outcome? Or is maintaining the current map of Ukrainian sovereignty what the West would want?
Sure. Well, it's going to be up to the Ukrainians and Ukrainian leaders to determine what the diplomatic path forward looks like here, what discussions, what negotiations they are comfortable with. What our objective is, and what tool we feel we can most be effective at, I should say, is supporting them and strengthening their hand in these negotiations. And that includes not just the economic support, the military support. I would note over the course of the last couple of days, the Department of Defense announced an additional package beyond what was announced just a few weeks ago, so we're going to continue to do that. But in terms of the negotiations and what they would be comfortable with, we're here to support them, and we're not going to predetermine that. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. Just last week, you said that the U.S. is sending a protective gear to Ukraine to help shield Ukrainians from chemical weapons use. Have those deliveries been made, or have they started? Is there any timeline specifically for those deliveries? Because Jake did mention that deliveries have started.
Sure. I can check for you a status of that. We try to do it in an expedited manner, and we still have means of getting equipment, of a range of equipment, to people who need it on the ground, and I can check if that equipment has been delivered or is in process, I guess you're asking. Yeah.
And I have a quick question on Elon Musk and him picking up a 9% stake in Twitter, which makes him the largest shareholder in the company. Obviously, the White House uses Twitter quite extensively, and Musk has been very critical of President Biden. I'm wondering if there is perhaps any recalibration of the use of the platform, or to what extent the White House is using Twitter going forward.
That's a decision of a private sector leader. I don't have any specific comment on it, but I expect we will continue to use Twitter, as you all will as well, I would expect. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. Was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more on President Biden and former President Obama and their relationship and how often and how they communicate. And you had mentioned that they are real friends and not just Washington friends. But given that they only live a few...
What the hell is kind of stupid ass, pointless, stupid question? Dude, you are getting one of like 30 minutes of her time, and you're gonna ask this? Like, come on. Who lets these people in the door? Who hired this person? I could ask. Come on. This is weak. This is what you're gonna ask. You have a short period of time to talk. This is what you're gonna ask.
miles apart, why is this the first time that the former president has been invited to the White House?
Well, I would say first,
He's
have
on
known
holiday,
Will, for some
motherfucker.
time.
He's hanging out with
And I-
millionaires, making tons of money. Why the hell would he hang out in the White House? You don't make money in the White House? Obama's a money greedy bitch. That's why.
I watched their friendship grow over the course of the period of time when the president was vice president and when the former president was president. And why I noted that at the top is because I think people who didn't have the seat I had may just think that it's like inviting any former president to the White House, and it certainly is not that. They talk on the phone. They do that on a regular basis. I'm not going to give you the number of times they've had conversations, but I would note they consult on a range of issues, but also about their...
Can't say you have like a weekly call. You can't say you have like a monthly call. Just they talk on the phone. I'm not going to tell you how often, but they do talk on the phone. So like they talked on the phone a couple months before he got elected, and they've talked on the phone when he got in the White House, and that was about it, is my guess. That's my theory. Man, she's going to make such a great liar for MSNBC. And if you think that Fox or CNN or MSNBC are any good, remember, these people go to those places and work. And are well respected and well admired and revered and well paid. That's what they do after this. So remember that. If you think that your mainstream media is any good at all, remember these liars go there and spew more lies. So that's who we have.
families and things happening in their personal lives. And, it's not a relationship of obligation. It's one where they developed a deep and close friendship through the course of their time serving together, and that has continued. And tomorrow is, of course, exactly the right time to have the former president come here, given this is one of the proudest accomplishments that they worked on together, they shared together, and it is emblematic of their shared view and belief that government can work for people, and it can work for the American people. And this is an example of building on a success from more than 10 years ago and making it better over time. So, and I suspect that former President Obama will be back when there is a portrait unveiling and perhaps for other engagements here as well in the future. Go ahead, Karen.
Thanks, Jen.
I don't care. I quit this shit. I'm going to get paid. This is a stupid question. I can't believe he asked it. Bitch ass motherfucker. Just going to swipe that one away and keep on moving. I like it. At least she's going to give some attitude. At least she's going to give some attitude these last couple weeks, right? I like the attitude. Big fan of it. Keep giving us, Jen. Right up to the last minute. See, look at that. That shit was a smirk. They don't have a 10-second back like they do on Rockfin. That's just a smirk when she was coming out of there. That was a solid, haha, I don't fucking care. I'm going to get paid. Good luck with that shit in the future. I'm done with this. I don't need your shit. I don't need his shit. He sniffs my hair one more time, I'm going to quit anyway. It's got to be the worst working for that fucking pedo.
Baker's last couple of days on the COVID funding deal, and has he talked to any Republicans on this?
I'm not going to give you an outline or a detail of people he's spoken to. I will note that it's rare that I am in the Oval Office on any given day where he doesn't just pick up the phone and call a member of Congress, often a Republican, at least when I'm in there, to talk to them about a range of priorities. This is clearly a huge focus for the president because of the dire need we have at this moment to get this funding through, and the fact that we are already at a point where we have had to halt, delay a range of programs and purchases that we feel are imperative. I would note that on the global side, we already need to stop plans to expand the global vaccination initiative to more countries. We'll also have to immediately scale back our global efforts to provide life-saving tools. This is a little bit of what I mentioned earlier, like oxygen systems, antiviral pills, things that can cut death rates by 90% for the unvaccinated. And I would also note that even as we're very encouraged by the progress, we're going to need more, because our objective here is going to continue to be ahead of the process and be ahead in planning to make sure we can have funding for antivirals, the vaccines needed for people for many months to come.
And just to be clear, so he has been talking on this specific issue?
He's been engaged with a range of members about a range of issues. This is a huge priority. I'm just not going to get into the details of what those calls look like. Go ahead.
It's a huge priority. I haven't been informed. I will not be informed because I just quit. Don't you fucking know that yet? Anyhow, move on.
Asking Jake here, because it sounded like at the end he was leaving open the possibility of U.S. boots on the ground to protect civilians in Ukraine or to protect the supply
I
chain.
don't think that was his intention.
He did say in terms of the supply chain or civilians that you're discussing all possibilities with allies.
Nothing has changed about the president's view about boots on the ground. Go ahead.
So the jobs report came out on Friday. Inflation is at 7.9%. It shows average hourly wages went up 5.6%. Wonder what the level of concern is for the president and the White House that people will stop spending because the stuff they want is more expensive, and that leads us to a recession.
Well, I would say on the latter part of your question that what we know is that the economy is strong. Our recovery has been strong, and that continues to be. While we of course are monitoring progress and where we have concern, including rising costs and obviously the need to continue to address inflation. That continues to be our assessment, which is even as there are challenges we need to continue to address, means that we have a strong basis that we are building from. I would remind you also that the unemployment rate is 3.6%, and the president created more jobs last year than any president in American history. So those fundamentals are also backed up by data. And obviously what we're trying to do, as you know from following this closely, there are a couple of areas that are impacting rising costs more than others, right? Including the price of gas, including
Yeah, there's rising costs, including CEOs' pay, including investors' wealth, including hidden owners' wealth. She's never going to say the real shit, right? Never going to say the real shit. She's never going to say what's actually happening. She's going to say the facade that they've all been saying. And that's what she's getting paid to go to MSNBC for, is to keep the facade up. Keep going with this facade that it's just a few things that are impacting everything. It's just gas prices that are impacting everything.
The price of automobiles and the impacts on the car industry of the lack of the chip shortages. So what we're also trying to do is take steps to address each area where we see rising costs. And obviously the president's announcement on Thursday to do a historic release from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, where we've seen already a small reduction in the price of gas and the price of oil come down by several dollars, is an effort to bring down costs that are impacting people's pocketbooks, checkbooks, et cetera.
Concerned about consumers stop spending.
We of course continue to
people's pocketbooks and checkbooks. Do people still have a checkbook? Is that a thing? I don't think so. Is that how out of touch they think that people still have checkbooks? First of all, who the fuck would accept it? Who accepts a check? I mean, who would you hand a check to? Who wouldn't look at you like you're crazy? Is it just like, I guess you have checks just for like paid bills? Who doesn't do it online? I don't know. And I don't know who she thinks does it. Because she sure as hell doesn't pay her own bills. She hasn't had any of that kind of concept in so long that she's unfamiliar with even what's going on.
I don't have any projection of that at this point in
One more
time.
thing on the wealth tax. Elon Musk tweeted out last week that Tesla and SpaceX would have died if such a tax existed in 2008 after the Great Recession. With the push for EVs and space exploration, what's the White House level of concern that a wealth tax could stifle innovation?
Well, I would first say that, right now, America's teachers and firefighters pay a higher tax rate than billionaires. I don't even think Elon Musk probably thinks that's fair. I don't know who thinks that's fair. It's not fair, and that should not be the case. And so what this proposal does, and why the president supports it, in his view, is it fixes that. And this would close an unfair tax loophole and promote economic growth by encouraging productivity, enhancing investments. And really what it does, to get into the nitty-gritty of it, is, right now the super wealthy billionaires, I think everyone considers them super wealthy, are able to access the value of their assets even if they never sell them in order to finance lavish consumption. And right now, billionaires with unrealized gains borrow against their assets during their life at ultra-low interest rates. And when they die, they get a step up in basis and no taxes paid on the appreciation of their asset. In other words, their income is never taxed. That's not fair, and I think what the president's trying to do, and what many senators and others support, is closing that. Why that should impact a lack of innovation, I think there should be more explanation on. This is trying to make the system more fair. Go ahead. Oh, sorry, Rich, I'll come back to you. Go ahead in the middle.
Thank you, Jen. 18 U.S. senators have written President Biden urging him to designate Cameroon for TPS. Is that something he's willing to do?
That's an assessment is made by a process led by the Department of Homeland Security, so I don't have any prediction of that at this point in time.
And on his approval rating, when he came into office last year, he was around 60% and even more.
He's going to attack her on that. That is, that's not a good one to go for. That's a rough one to attack him on.
And now he's around 40% and sometimes less. Who does he blame now? Putin, Trump, or you? The communication team?
Who does he blame?
Holy shit. I might make that my fucking ringtone. That was so fucking awesome.
Sorry, Rich, I'll come back to you. Go ahead in the middle.
Thank you, Jen. 18 U.S. senators have written President Biden urging him to designate Cameroon for TPS. Is that something he's willing to do?
That's an assessment is made by a process led by the Department of Homeland Security, so I don't have any prediction of that at this point in time.
And on his approval rating, when he came into office last year, he was around 60% and even more, and now he's around 40% and sometimes less. Who does he blame now? Putin, Trump, or you? The communication.
Oh, look at this face. Oh my god. I just want to stew in this for a little bit. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh, I love this man. I love this man more than anything. Look at that face. I gotta, hold on. Oh my god. Where am I at here? I gotta, it's too much. That's too much. I can watch it again. I gotta watch it again. It's fucking, oh my god. This man is great. Where are we at here? 60. This is amazing.
For TPS, is that something he's willing to do?
That's an assessment is made by a process led by the Department of Homeland Security, so I don't have any prediction of that at this point in time.
And on his approval rating, when he came into office last year, he was around 60% and even more, and now he's around 40% and sometimes less. Who does he blame now? Putin, Trump, or you? The communication.
Oh my god! I could do this for all day! Oh! It's too much. That face and the question. Oh, does he blame me? Oh, that's so fucking great. I can stew in this all day. I gotta write this down as one of my favorite new fucking moments. Jesus, H. 56:43. Oh, oh, that's so great. That's so great.
Me? Oh, I don't know. I hope not. Look, I think that the president recognizes that the country is still grappling with a number of challenges that impact people in their everyday lives, whether that is a continuing fight with a pandemic that has been going on for several years, or the fact that costs are going up. Some of those are a result of the actions of President Putin, yes, as it relates to gas.
Oh, you've said that shit like 3 times through this conference. Man, he stung you so good, and you're just gonna go back to the same old shit. Putin's to blame. Gas prices, food prices, blah blah blah.
But others are related to impacts of COVID-19 and impacts on the supply chain. So what our focus is, and his focus continues to be on solutions to address these challenges and keeping our heads down and trying to continue to deliver for the American people. Go ahead, Weisha.
Thanks, Jen. Shifting to Russian billionaires, because today the DOJ announced the seizure of that.
Yes.
Whoa, whoa. First of all, when they're Russian billionaires, we call them oligarchs. When they're American billionaires, we call them, what do we call them? Creators, or we call them entrepreneurs, or we call them innovators. They can be any of those things, but then the Russians, they're oligarchs. Remember that. Americans, innovators, entrepreneurs, Russians, oligarchs. That's very important.
$90 billion yacht. Is there any evidence that zoning in on Putin's close allies in this way, seizing their assets, is having an impact on his calculations? And if not, what is the end goal here to try to apply pressure to Putin himself?
Well, I think it's not the only approach we're taking, right, Weisha? But it is one of the steps that we have, our national security team determined from the beginning would hopefully be effective on putting necessary pressure on. That includes significant consequences we have implemented on the Russian economy, but it also includes going after people who are in the inner circle and are close, where their actions have warranted that, including Russian oligarchs. But it is
See?
not our
Bam! Bam! 10 points. Russian oligarchs, take a shot. I can't drink. Mouth surgery. But, here. Do whatever you do, because that's freaking great. I love she fucking calls them oligarchs a few minutes later. I'm going to take a small edible for that minute. That was fantastic. Can't take a shot today. Or this week. Going to Jimmy Door tomorrow, and I can't drink. But I'll be live streaming my intro to Jimmy, walking in the place, kind of. I'll have a few mini live streams through the day, going the venture to Jimmy. And then the after show, I'm going to come home and stream some Jimmy probably. I'm going to be jacked up on Jimmy, so I'll probably stream some Jimmy, honestly. That's just, you know. But, yeah, I'm excited for it.
Our expectation is not that one component is going to lead to a direct change. These are just a range of pressure points, and we're going to use all of them that we possibly can.
What is the hope that this particular action will take? Because we're seeing so many images of yachts around the world being seized, other assets being seized.
Well, again, it's one of several actions we're taking, and I think if you look at the totality of it and the pool of the actions, the Russian economy has been on a downward spiral. There are businesses, private sector businesses around the world have pulled their business and their investments out of Russia. They are isolated from the world. The oligarchs are isolated from the world. All of these
oligarchs. Seriously, I couldn't do enough shots for this. If we played that as a game. And you played like every time they call a Russian rich person an oligarch, and every time they call an American rich person an entrepreneur or an innovator, you know, that kind of shit. I bet you could get pretty toasted up. If you're a political nut like me, you get pretty toasted up playing that kind of game.
to be consequences and meant to, of course, impact the calculation over the longer term.
Just one quick one on the president's announcement last week about the strategic supply of oil.
Yep.
So, you know, the crude prices came down, we saw that almost right away, but how long do you expect that Band-Aid will hold if OPEC does not also agree to ramp up production, which it has not so far?
Well, here's how you should look at it. It was intentionally done as 1 million barrels a day over the course of 6 months because we knew there needed to be kind of a gap filled for that period of time, where our expectation and hope is that there could be greater production by the oil companies over that course of time. There are also steps, as you've seen, this is a coordinated release around the world, and there was an announcement last Friday about that as well, by other countries to help fill the gap that we see from Russia and from the fact that their oil is not contributing as much as it had historically onto the global marketplace. And obviously, oil prices are global. I mean, it's a global marketplace. So we're already seeing, as you said, a reduction, but this is meant to be a 6-month effort to kind of bridge the gap in many ways for that period of time and ramp up production in a range of ways. Yes, you referenced OPEC Plus, but also other countries last Friday announced their plans and their intentions to release more oil to help meet the supply needs on the market. That's what we're intending to do here, and we're going to continue to look at many ways to achieve that objective. Go ahead.
Iran over the weekend said that a deal was close. We heard something different from U.S. officials only days before that. So what is the current assessment of that deal?
Well, our assessment is that the onus for concluding this deal is squarely on Iran. Together with our European allies, the United States has negotiated the roadmap for a mutual return to compliance through the Vienna talks. The president will re-enter the deal if...
I do love it when they go back and start reading. That's neat. That's when you know they knew that question was coming. It was rather a plant, or I mean, they absolutely knew it was coming. So they're going to finish off with some red statements. Red statements. I didn't get to smoke yesterday either since I had the surgery, so that was my my third joint today, but not smoking like I usually do. And I have one more rolled for the show. If I get 2 more followers on Twitch, I'll fucking smoke it up. If I get 2 more followers on YouTube, I'll smoke it up. 2 more followers on either platform, I'll smoke that last joint. It's probably going to happen on Twitch first, but we'll see what happens tonight. Thanks for hanging out. We got a little bit longer of this before we go to An0maly. Hold on. Let's see how I wanted to do this. A little bit more of this, and then I want to go over the week's protests, and then An0maly. First time with An0maly. So we're going to go over the week's protest after this, and then An0maly, whoever the fuck that is. Literally don't know who it is. YouTube suggested it because I watch a lot of politics. So since I watch a lot of politics, YouTube suggested it, and I will be checking it out. That's literally, that's how we got there. Sorry.
It's our national security interests, and both ourselves and our allies are prepared to conclude a strong agreement if Iran is prepared to do the same. What we've seen, however, is that Iran has raised a number of issues that have nothing to do with the mutual compliance under the nuclear deal, and that is where our focus and our objective is. So we would encourage Iran to focus on the deal negotiated in Vienna rather than seeking to open issues outside the Vienna context or casting blame, of course, on others for a pause in the talks.
Is the White House making any push this week, last-minute push, to get another Republican or 2 to support Judge Jackson? And secondly, if you could reflect on what Senator Graham said about if Republicans were in control, that she wouldn't even get a hearing.
Let me say on the first part that our view continues to be that Judge Jackson's credentials, her record, warrant bipartisan support. We've seen some of that to date, but certainly we're going to continue to.
But that never happens anymore because that's not how anything works on a bigger level like, SCOTUS or whatever the fuck they call it now. But if it was a, quiet bill, which we'll go over later in the show, if it's a quiet bill to fuck over the American people or to make the, the war machine stronger, then they'll do bipartisan. But when it's like this, they have to be partisan about it. And it's kind of, disgusting and gross. And we're never going to talk about that on mainstream media, so I'm going to call it out every time I see it.
worked the phones up until the last moment here, but I can't make a prediction for you on what the end result of that will be. I would say on Senator Graham's comments, I think the best questions are probably posed to Senator Graham. I would remind you all that he has previously voted for Judge Jackson when her record and her credentials were exactly the same as they are today. So it seems like there's more questions that could be posed to him. Go ahead.
As a follow-up on the Senate.
That's fantastic. I love how in her going away tour last week she's going to be doing this. She's still going to be like, well, you're asking the wrong person. She does that at least once a show, or once a once a press briefing, once a show. It's entertaining to me. I enjoy it.
Confirmation hearing. Republicans have said that they wanted to, this would be a respectful and fair process, and it's been very contentious. Given Senator Graham's comments, what do you think is the nature of the Supreme Court as we look ahead for future, not just this Supreme Court nominee, but for future nominations, given the contentious comments from Senator Graham?
Well, look, I think that our view continues to be that qualified nominees, those who meet every objective bar of qualification, of background, should be considered and treated with fairness as they go through the process. That's how President Biden is going to continue to operate, and that's how we would expect every member of the Senate to continue to operate. So obviously his comments are disappointing, but our focus needs to continue to be on supporting Judge Jackson and her path to the Supreme Court. Go ahead.
Jen, I wanted to ask two questions, one about refugees and one about the Supreme Court.
Sure.
On refugees, the 100,000 number that the president put out when you all were in Europe.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how you arrived at that number and what preparations are being made at this point to accept those refugees? I haven't seen the State Department really put out a lot of detail yet.
Yeah, I expect we'll have more soon, and I think the understandable questions are kind of the prioritization and how the process will work and what the models will be. All very good questions, and we're just working through the final pieces of the policy process at this point in time. In terms of the number, it doesn't mean we will reach that number. As you know, while there have been a startling number of refugees, individuals who have been kicked out of their homes because of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the vast majority of them.
When she starts talking with her hands a ton, it's usually propaganda bullshit. So I don't know what she's lying about right now, but when she starts talking a ton with her hands and getting all serious look like that, usually means she's fucking full of it. So I don't know what she'd be bullshitting about right here. That there's not as many people trying to leave. I don't know.
Want to stay in neighboring countries, and that continues to be our expectation. But this is just an effort for us to play a role beyond the historic amount of humanitarian assistance and support we're providing to neighboring countries to ensure that we can find a pathway for those who want to come to the United States to come here too. But we're still finalizing the policy details, and hopefully we'll have more soon on that for you. Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
One more on the Supreme Court.
Yep.
President Biden was asked last week about Justice Clarence Thomas. I believe he said something, or he said it was up to the Justice Department or the January 6th committee on whether Justice Clarence Thomas would recuse himself from any of those cases, those being the January 6th cases. Judicial ethics mean that the Supreme Court justice generally makes his own decision on recusals. Does the president still agree with the view of the Justice Department or January 6th committee should decide? Has he taken a position at this point on whether Justice Thomas should recuse himself?
That's a decision up to the Supreme Court. We don't have an additional position from here. Go ahead.
They were friends from the time they were on Foreign
Really?
Relations Committee together. So, in terms of Japan has the largest number of U.S. troops, is there some way that they could be involved as a country that also went through war with this current situation in Russia? And do you know if they've been included in some of these discussions going forward?
I know that that they have been included in a part of the conversations, including during President Biden's recent trip to Europe, and that our partnership and friendship with Japan continues as we discuss how to help support Ukraine through the invasion Russia's invasion. Go ahead.
Okay.
Okay, we have one or two more here. Go ahead.
Amid the Ukraine crisis, we know United States and Russia are still working together on Afghanistan issues. Actually, last Thursday, March 31st, there was a meeting in China with the U.S., China, and Russia delegations over this issue. Can you describe the working relations between U.S. and Russia on this meeting, and what's China's role on it? Do you worry China might take advantage of the tension between U.S. and Russia right now?
And just so I make sure I'm unpacking your question and what you're asking about, you're asking about a meeting on Afghanistan between Russian, U.S. and Chinese officials. Yes. I would really point you to the State Department. I'm happy to get more details on it and see. I would note that Russia and China are both members of the P5+1, and obviously we're continuing to pursue a diplomatic deal there as well. So there are other examples of us working even as we are horrified by the atrocities in Ukraine. Okay, last one.
Thank you, Jen. Moments ago, you said that it was ludicrous that Russia would be allowed to sit on the UN Human Rights Council. I'm wondering if the president wants to see China remain on that Human Rights Council as well, given that his administration has already made a determination that China's engaged in genocide against the Uyghur people.
Well, our focus right now on the international stage on this question is on Russia, given the invasion of Ukraine and given what we're seeing, the photos from Bucha, others that we may see in the future. Obviously, we will continue to press publicly and privately where we have concerns about human rights violations, including as it relates to China. Thanks so much, everyone.
Goodbye. I can't wait to be done with you. I can't wait to be done with you. She can't wait. She's still at the door. She's got senioritis coming up in this motherfucker. Doing it strong. Heavy with the senioritis is our good Jen. She told a few people off today. I loved it. That was good stuff. All right. Well, always entertaining. Oh, I'm not going to be able to do these articles properly, but all right. I wanted to go over some protests this week and not miss anything. In Utah, over the Salt Lake City mayor, there is a Black Lives Matter protest this week on the 14th. Ooh, British Columbia, pipeline protest April 9th. I don't know if I have any Canadians that watch, but that's fantastic. Stop the pipelines. An abortion protest in Illinois on April 8th, or April 9th. Jesus, Todd. Take another pain med. Transgender rights in North Carolina on April 10th. Where's that? State Capitol. Any of my North Carolina friends bump into you? There's a rally in Raleigh. Scott. Oh, online webinar with Scott Ritter. That's pretty awesome. When's this? April 6th? So, I can literally tomorrow. Tomorrow, an important UNAC webinar on Ukraine, a conversation with Scott Ritter, former UN weapons and inspector, hosted by Margaret Flowers and Joe Lombard at 7 p.m. Eastern. And there is a registration there. Holy, that's a lot. Okay, that's like 5 pages worth of registration information, but I'll leave this open for a second here. Give me 1 second. Sorry. That should be good enough to check out. So, check that out. That'd be good online. Like I said, I am going to be at Jimmy Dore, so I will not be able to watch that tomorrow, unfortunately. But that is pretty cool. Scott Ritter webinar. All right. Oh, fucking. Colorado. On the 8th, we have a rally for coal, free Colorado. Calling all clean air, environmental justice, and climate activates any day now. The Colorado Public Utilities Commission will decide to approve or reject Xcel's Energy latest protest to burn coal at Colorado's biggest coal plant for 12 more years. Communities can't afford 12 more years of pollution. All right. Well, that's in a couple days. That's a pretty big one to go to. Pretty important one. Oh. Oh my god. Why does every site have to be full of shit? Denver. So yeah. Go through that for a second there, guys. 350 Colorado. So the Xcel address is 1800 Laramie in Denver, Colorado. And again, they're meeting Friday at noon. So yeah, rally for coal. So we got a few rallies this week, guys. Good stuff. Well, let's go back to... I don't have much of a voice tonight, so I don't want to be doing that all night. But I have a few more articles to go over, but first... I missed my big name Monday yesterday because, again, face surgery. So I couldn't talk yesterday. But usually on Mondays I do big names. This person keeps popping up on my Facebook. Not my Facebook. On my YouTube algorithm. The algorithm keeps showing me this person. So via el algorithm, I am going to watch it.
As always, I wanted to do this live stream today to talk about why I think the Overton window is shifting left and why the Republican Party, although I'm not accusing everybody of being controlled opposition, I'm not being rational, oh, they're all fake, they're all doing this. That's not what I'm trying to say, but ideologically, the right wing, the Republican Party is acting like a controlled opposition in the sense of they're almost guaranteeing a far left future. And I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to explain it. And I think a lot of people are going to agree with me when they hear how I'm coming about it. So that's what I'm talking about, how the Republican Party has become controlled opposition.
Okay, so he thinks they're a controlled opposition. I would say they're both controlled opposition, so he thinks I'm going to agree with him. This might be interesting, eh? I'm going to turn him down a little bit so I can talk over him. Because, yeah. I'm going to watch the whole hour. We're just going to talk over the prick. Because I already don't like him. He's telling me what, oh, you're going to agree with me. No, I'm not. But, whatever. Let's give it a rundown, eh? First time reactions. Never watched this person before. This is all new to me. YouTube suggested. So, here we go. Already 100% opposite.
In the sense of the left will shift the Overton window towards the left further. The right will shift along with them. And what the right wing actually does is gatekeeps and blocks other people out of it, really just assuring that the left wing will, be victorious in the end ideologically. So that's the show. I'm probably going to wait like 30 seconds. I'll put a few comments up before we start just to keep it entertaining. And then once a bunch of people get here, we're going to start it. Let's see. Diana says hi. I think some do, some don't. I think actually a majority don't. So I'm going to explain how the Republican Party, Fox News, the mainstream, even a lot of the MAGA movement, not purposely, is ensuring the left comes to victory psychologically. This is my psychological analysis, why Republicans lose ground. So on the left wing, we see that they're becoming further and further authoritarian. If you talk about gender, they want to ban you. It's hate speech, Babylon Bee. They're going further towards censorship, right? They're going authoritarian. They're not liberal anymore. They're not open to new ideas. They're just going full-blown authoritarian in a weird direction. So you have the Republican Party, right? This is the opposition party. Donald Trump, sometimes it's Mitt Romney. I mean, he's a phony, but even the mainstream people, Fox News, these people that are like, oh, they're cooler than the Mitt Romneys, right? They're fake. This is the real Republican Party. We're really going to bring it back. Here's what a lot of people do. It happens on Getter. It happens on Parler. It happens at events like CPAC, TPUSA, even a lot of these new age, conventions that are super cool, super hip. They're moving it right a little.
I want to smack the hat off his fucking head right now. But besides that, I'm just annoyed.
Little bit. There's this weird thing that goes on where, let's say like Fox News, they will hire Caitlyn Jenner, right? Caitlyn Jenner is now a Fox News contributor, like officially or something. So this is something, and I'm going to get to it. Please stick with me, whether you like Caitlyn Jenner or not, you feel a certain way. Hear me out because it's really important, and I'm going to get to it. But 15, 20 years ago, Obama was against gay marriage. California actually voted down gay marriage in 2008 as a premature, like, hey, we're against it in case they try to federalize it. So even California used to be against gay marriage within the last 20 years. Okay, now the Overton window is so far towards the left socially that even Fox News is willing to host Caitlyn Jenner. Now, I would be somewhat okay with this if they allowed the conversation on the further right to exist, right? But here's what a lot of people on the right wing do at the major events at Fox News. They act like the people that are actually more conservative than them and Christian than them. They do this kind of left wing gatekeepery thing where they're like, we will tell you what's conservative, but people like Bryson Gray, Nick Fuentes, etc., in different reasons, for different reasons, they'll say they're so far right, we will ban them from our platforms, we will ban them from Getter, or their conversations.
So he really doesn't understand how both sides work, because that's how the left works too. That's exactly how the left works too. And if you don't understand that, then I guess you're kind of a dipshit. I don't know. But yeah, the far left and the far right are ostracized by the center left and the center right. That's how politics works. So if you think it's all moving left because you don't understand how the other side works, that's your own fault. But no, we're not all moving left right now. That's not what's happening at fucking all. That's ridiculous. That's just asinine. I don't
hate speech, and I'm not saying they're both banned, but I believe one of them is. We will not even entertain this conversation, and this is why they're psychologically setting themselves up for failure. I'm not telling you have to agree with Nick and Bryson on everything. You should be your own person and feel how you feel socially. If you're a libertarian, you're a libertarian. If you're more Christian conservative, you're Christian conservative. If you're a Muslim, who am I to tell you that you shouldn't? You get what I'm saying?
Is that what he is a Christian conservative? Because that's, first of all, Christ would have been a fucking progressive, because he would be for freaking everybody being loving and happy and free. He'd be for poor people. He wouldn't be for fucking people being billionaires or rich. He wouldn't be for capitalism. So, okay, I might be a freaking agnostic, but I went to Catholic school and I was raised, K through 8, having to go to Bible school every day. So, yeah, dude, no.
I'm not telling people what to believe, but I'm just saying psychologically, this is my analysis. When the right wing is moving further and further to the left, they're not allowing a further right.
They're not, man. They're not at all. You're just trying to push it. You're pushing the Overton window to the right as you're saying this kind of shit. I mean, not that you're strong enough, but no, you're completely wrong on this. Nope. Because the left, they're all moving to the corporate whatever, the oligarchy, because the left is not moving left at fucking all. At all. I mean, we're dragging them kicking and screaming, tiny little no, they're just, no. That's not
conversation. They're agreeing with the left wing that, yeah, they're too far, right? But they will literally go so far as to hire Caitlyn Jenner at Fox News. So now there's going to be people watching Fox News and they have normalized trans.
And like 6 years ago, freaking NBC hired Megyn Kelly, and MSNBC and CNN have to hire so many ex-Republican people to make sure that they're equal, and Joe Scarborough, or whatever the frick his name is, was actually a Republican on MSNBC morning show. And what the hell are you talking about?
Transgenderism. Okay, are you allowing the other side of the conversation to be heard? Because that's a true free market where it's like you have the people far to the left, you have the people far to the right, in the middle. Everybody has a debate, but the right wing is almost guaranteeing that the left wing wins the Overton window because they're sliding the Overton window further and further and further. The right wing plays along, and the thing is, I would be okay with them playing along as long as they allowed the other conversation to be had, because then it would naturally weigh itself out and the best ideas would win. If they were liberal, I think the liberals would win. If they were further right and further conservative and Christian, then the further Christian, they would naturally bring them back a little bit, and that's what's happening in this country. The left has gone insane, the right is going further left, the middle ground is psycho now, and the reason it's happening is not just because the left's going further left, it's actually also happening because the right wing is ensuring that it happens. They're almost like a controlled opposition, team where it's...
Yeah, and everybody on the left says that the Democrats are controlled opposition. So you really don't understand politics, do you? Like, what is he says he's a political analysis and and news and analysis and hip hop. So he says news analysis is one of his things, right? So why is he such a jackass? He's a conservative right-winger, but why does he not understand the left at all? Like, he has no concept? I understand how the right and left work. Why do you not? I don't always know how to speak to them, but I know how it works.
It's like they're just there to facilitate this idea that they're conserving something, but they're guaranteeing that we will never conserve anything, because anybody that takes it further conservative, they will blacklist, they will ban from events. Like, this goes on in the right wing, guys. I don't know if you know, but if you have these unpopular Christian or conservative or further right opinions, it's not like these people know how to debate you and the modern conservative people. They're like, no, you're crazy. No, the left is right.
Yeah, you've never heard of progressives getting banned from debates? Really? Seriously?
About you. You are that. You're horrible. You're racist. You're sexist. You're a transphobe. You're a homophobe. You need to like Rob Smith and Caitlyn Jenner. And all I'm saying is, no offense to Rob Smith or Caitlyn Jenner. I'm just being honest. If you are going to push the over, and this is not Rob or Caitlyn's fault, but like Fox News, TPUSA, they act as if all the opponents of their ideology are so bad and shouldn't even be allowed in the public conversation, when in reality, this is why the left wing wins. They push further. They censor. The right goes along.
We don't win anything. What are you talking about? The oligarchs and corporations win. We don't win anything. And again, I'm real left. I'm not Democrat center left, which is what he's really talking about, is the Democratic center left, or whatever you want to call it, the corporate left or the non-left. But you don't really understand shit. If you think the Democrats are actually left, people that think that the Democrats are socialists or fucking communists are stupid, because that's not what they are. They're not even close to it. Even progressives aren't like real socialists. You have to get outside of Democrats and Republicans to get anything like that. So you don't understand shit, dude. Is what I'm seeing. If you think Democrats are pushing everything left, hardcore left, just everything's moving left so fast that you can't handle it, where the fuck is your bubble at?
Along with them, they censor their right wing. Naturally, in a free market, this would balance out and move a little bit further to the right, because I'm not saying one side has the right ideas or the wrong ideas, but the modern conservative movement is more liberal than other Democrats. But it's not just because the left is moving further left. It's because the right is blocking their further right and saying that they're too far. For
We're
instance,
getting blocked too,
these
man. The true left is getting blocked. How do you not know that? Are you an actual political person? Like, you not know that the left's getting blocked? Getting deleted? Getting censored?
right-wing events, you could get in if you're like a left-wing psycho journalist who hates right-wingers, like Right Wing Watch. All you do is just complain about them, try to get them banned, try to get them censored. They will allow in on Getter further right activists just to be like, hey, we're right, we're conservative, right? We don't ban people, we believe in free speech. So they let these slimy left-wing journalists into their events, but they'll ban far-right people and be like, but this is...
Same here. We let freaking like who was it? One of the presidential candidates into the Democratic National Convention, but wouldn't let freaking Tulsi in or something like that. Like they don't let progressives. They wouldn't let Dennis Kucinich in, but they let in somebody else from a state that was a Republican. And that's the kind of shit they do. They don't let progressives in. They let Republicans in instead. It's one big party, and we're not in it. How do you not know?
Where we draw the line, and it's like, do you get what I'm saying? Psychologically, they're moving further left. They're blocking out the further right conversation. There's no way. It's the same reason the whole country goes further left. It's because they're not allowing a free market conversation. They are making it essentially illegal for you to talk about gender. They're making it essentially illegal for you to disagree with Black Lives Matter. You might lose your...
I hear this shit all the time. What are you talking about?
job. They're making it illegal to criticize Pfizer. So the left wing's going authoritarianism. They're hiding their political agenda behind big pharma, behind racial groups, behind LGBT, and then you can't...
How'd big pharma get tossed in there? That doesn't
even talk to them. Meanwhile, the right is becoming a more left-wing version of the left wing 10 years ago, and they're doing the smaller version of the same thing. Oh, we're going to have Caitlyn Jenner on Fox News. Oh, we're going to have the gay person do this. Oh, we're going to do this. We're going to do that. But here's my issue, folks. I'm not saying that you're not allowed to do that in America. I'm saying the fact that the right wing does all this stuff and turns into a further left version of the left wing 10 years ago, but then banishes, blocks, badmouths. If you ever watch an interview of people like Dan Crenshaw gets asked a question, and he can't handle a question from the further right. They have very valid questions about his free speech policies, about his, Second Amendment red flag law idea he floated around. His Ukraine opinions are garbage. He said. So the point I'm saying, I don't care if you like or dislike Dan Crenshaw, but these right wingers melt down when you start to challenge them from the right. They're like, oh my God, that's an anti-Semite. Oh my goodness, what are you, a Russian propaganda? Like they play these same little games. So it's almost as if they're controlled opposition, where it's like the left goes crazy far left, the right moves further left.
Is he just gonna keep doing this? Because I'm gonna keep arguing with him that, dude, it's the same on the left, you idiot. He must not watch anything outside of his bubble, or he knows how to talk to his people, and this gets his people riled up. Because I'm not gonna watch an hour of this shit if he doesn't move on pretty soon.
left than Obama was 20 years ago. And the craziest part is they don't even allow you to have a conversation about it, which is my pet peeve in anything, because it's like, I don't, there's elements of both sides I see. I'm a very compassionate person. I'm not just like a hateful person. Like, I'm trying to humanize the situation. Okay, how can we be nice but not ruin society at the same time? But it's not like these people.
How can we be nice but not ruin society at the same time by allowing people to be who they want to be? Oh, I have to not do this today. I'm getting already very upset. Is this guy for real?
All just being paid off or anything. I think for some reason, this power structure on the right wing, it's safe. It's safer to just not talk about that stuff. It's safer to be socially liberal. It's safer to virtue signal. And it's like, what they don't realize is they're gatekeeping the philosophy of the left wing and not allowing the further right element of it to drag it back naturally, or at least allow people to hear that conversation so they could weigh out both ideas in their head and move forward. I've watched so many of them ban right-wingers from events, ban right-wingers from apps, right-wingers banning other right-wingers, but they're more tolerant to the far left than they are to the far right. And I feel like just psychologically, that's going to skew.
They're more tolerant of the far left because the far left attacks the Democrats. There you go. Okay? There you go. The far left attacks Democrats. So the center right Democrats, your corporate Democrats like that, or your corporate Republicans like those far left Democrats. Now, again, nobody talks to actual progressives, actual independent progressives. But what he's talking about are progressive Democrats. And yes, Republican, center Republican journalists like to talk to them because they will attack those corporate Democrats. And it's good to have a Democrat attack a Democrat. That looks good for you. It's so basic. Jesus, this guy's easy to break down.
When it comes to the far left and Antifa, I think what's annoying about them is they just like throw fits and like hit things. But if Antifa was just trying to talk and show up in events and discuss, I wouldn't have a problem with them. I don't care if they're full-blown communists. I think we should be allowed to have a conversation about it. But the problem with them is they just hit things, they yell, they want to ruin events. It's like, that's annoying. But when it comes to a lot of these,
unlike the Proud Boys that try to go and start fights and shit, there's no fucking difference, dude.
far right people, they have certain ideologies and conversations that are not politically correct. Like the right wing gatekeepers in the Republican Party and a lot of the MAGA movement, like as revolutionary as Trump was, a lot of his advisors and his movement is very safe in some ways, where it's like they're like, no, we disavow, we can't. And I'm like, you're moving left, and then they act like people like Bryson Gray are like this huge problem. And I'm like, if you don't know Bryson Gray, he's a rapper, but he's also super right-wing, super Christian, super conservative, and he's like almost like semi-blacklisted. Like, oh my gosh, his opinions, we disavow that. We are the log cabin Republicans, and we can't even allow that. And I'm like, why do you not understand why Bryson feels the way he feels? You don't have to agree with him, but like the slippery slope is clearly real. Like anybody that's going to sit there and say, I can't figure out why these Christians feel that way. I felt that way 10 years ago. I get it now. I understand why they feel. I have compassion for them because I'm like, yeah, the slippery slope was realer than we thought it was. So that, why, but there's like right-wing groups that are like, oh, that's homophobic and we can't even associate with him. You're moving further left than Obama, Hillary, like Joe Biden 10 years ago. And now you're blocking off right-wingers from combating you. It's like you're controlled opposition that is purpose.
And guess what? Those people that you just named were Republicans 30 years ago. So you're saying those people were right 10 years ago, but 30 years ago their policies were Republican. So it shifts back and forth, but it's all this corporate bullshit, and the far left and the far right have nothing to do with the conversation. You should know that, but you don't, obviously. Because if you knew anything, the far left and far right have more in common than the corporate Dems and the corporate Repubs, because we don't have anything in corporate. Yeah, you have no
moving us further and further left, socially, economically, politically, like in every which way. The Trump era went further left than Obama. In gay marriage, Trump went further than Obama. I mean, maybe I don't know how he supported it, but he was more pro-gay at the start. Okay, but what about economically? He was conservative for a while, but once COVID came around, he turned into a money printing AOC. And I'm not saying he is AOC, but it's like, I'm trying to figure out what we're conserving, because it's certainly not social issues. You're now adopting further left stances than the left wing. And the crazy part is you're not even allowing the debate. If you just thought that way, I don't care. But you're not going to allow the debate. Now I don't like you. Now I have to speak about you. Now I have to get you out of the way because you're not allowing a free market of ideas, and you are adapting left-wing policy and blocking other right-wingers. You're now controlled opposition.
Like, that's like his coin, huh? Free market of ideas. That's what he keeps saying. Like, we're not allowing him to speak. He has 250,000 followers. He's got 10,000 views on this. 260,000. He's got 10,000 views. That's not horrible. You haven't been taken out. You haven't been taken off the air like some people. So I don't have to watch you on Rockfin or anything or on Rumble. So you're not exactly suppressed yet, dude. I don't know. Not loving my first 12 and a half minutes. Thank you, YouTube, for subscribing this person to me. Seriously, YouTube put this in my face for like days on end. I was like, screw it. I'll watch something from him. I'll watch something from this person to see what is going on.
So they're not conserving anything socially. They're not conserving anything fiscally. Like economically, our country is way further left than we were 20, 30 years ago. I'm trying to figure out what are we conserving? Really nothing. You know, there's a famous quote, I forget.
Way further left than 20, 30 years ago. Like a third of our schools have been privatized. What else is like municipalities have been privatized in the last 30 years. Prisons have been privatized massively in the last 30 years. They've cut Medicaid. They've cut benefits for social benefits. What the fuck are you talking about? We've increased our military budget. We've increased like corporate loopholes so that people can, so we've decreased corporate taxes. We've decreased taxes for the rich. These are all Republican things that we've done. What the hell are you talking about?
Who said it or who they credit this to, but like progressivism is or republicanism or conservatism is progressivism with a speed limit. It's like, the Democrats are flying 50 miles an hour that way. The Republicans are flying 20 miles an hour that way. And people saying stop the train are called homophobes and racists or something, where it's like, it's not even a racial thing. It's just like you guys are doing further left stuff in every department, economically,
so
socially. And now you're trying to censor speech. You've had the Getter CEO go on Tim Cast and admit he censors Nick Fuentes and supporters of him for saying a word. And then it was like Royper. And then Tim's like, do you know what that word means? And he couldn't even define what the word meant. He said, I'm going to ban people for saying this word, calling to their own people. And the CEO of the company didn't even know what the word meant. So it's like, how are you standing up for freedom of speech? The First Amendment protects. Listen, Antifa loses their First Amendment when they start hitting people because that's not in the First Amendment.
Oh my God! Stop fucking talking about Antifa hitting people. Antifa has like been proven to not be a true organization. It like popped up a couple times. It's nothing like the Proud Boys. It's nothing like the Bugalo Boys. It's nothing like that. Oh my God! You are such a fucking oh my God, gaslighting asshole.
But if they're trying to have a communist conversation, they should be allowed to, and the same with the further right. If they're doing violence and illegal stuff, that's one thing. But if they're simply, trying to just say unpopular social, racial, religious things, I mean, that's...
Dude, here in Florida, if you're a freaking right-winger, you have the right to protest. If you're a left-winger, you have the right to get hit by a car. Okay? That's what DeSantis did here. So, what the fuck are you talking about?
That's what the First Amendment's supposed to protect. It's not here to protect everyone.
Oh, man.
Like water is wet. It's there to protect unpopular speech. And that's what I'm trying to explain is like the right wing actually doesn't do that. They gatekeep this left wing ideology and then act as if you're crazy if you want the ship to stop. And when it comes to radicalization and people really taking it too far, I agree with Daryl Davis. He was recently on Joe Rogan with Bill Ottman from Minds.com. And he is a black jazz musician who got hundreds or dozens of KKK members to quit. How did he do that? Did he do that by yelling at them and screaming at them and banning them from Facebook? No, he did it through talking to them and being such a cool black guy that they were like, oh, I've never met somebody like you. You've changed my whole ideology because you're such an intellectual. So that's the way to
by being such a cool black guy. Wow, I've never met anybody like you before. The fact is they never had a conversation with anybody before because they fucking wrote him off in 3 seconds usually, the assholes that he talked to, and forcing them to talk to him. And coming from a place of love, he broke through him after a very long period of time. And you completely misgeneralize his situation. I've seen many interviews from him. Many.
Radicalize people is to be honest and have conversations and have empathy and humility. And not only does the left not do that, they think every grandma is like a Nazi for voting for Trump, but even the Republican Party is banishing. There's millions of kids that feel displaced because of all this racial propaganda in America. There's millions of kids that are feeling further right now than ever because they're getting treated so garbage. And
yeah, he's making me feel better about the way I talk about things because I do not write people off. I do not write people off because they're far left or far right. He seems to be writing off the entire left side. So that's interesting. I'll give the far right credit. Like I said, we usually agree on things more than Democrats and Republicans agree on things. The far left and the far right can agree on a lot of shit, and this guy seems to be writing off everybody outside of his community. Everybody outside of his community is a jackass, and they don't understand anything. So I'm gonna keep being a jackass for a few more minutes, but he's kind of pissing me off. So I didn't. I'm not appreciating YouTube's algorithm by showing me this. It makes no fucking sense since I watch libertarians or I watch far left progressives or Marxists or what do you want to socialists or what do you want to call us? Doesn't matter. Probably more socialist is what communist is what he's gonna say, but yeah, I don't appreciate the way he's converting, and I don't know why YouTube would show me this person. I really don't know why YouTube would show me this person because I would have nobody that I watch is like this. So this doesn't work in the algorithm. It hides people in the algorithm, but shows me this shit. So please tell me how you were so poor off and everything's so rough because you're on the far right and people are blocking you when YouTube showed you in the algorithm and I'm a fucking far left person. Fuck you, YouTube.
Republican Party just disavows them, throws them off getter, and I'm thinking to myself, what are you doing? Because in certain cases, people are going to act out a certain way because the First Amendment not only protects, us from the government, but really it's a diffuser in a lot of ways. If it's like holding into something and not being able to vent, now it like builds up, you get angrier. It's the same thing with free speech. When you're banished to the dark webs, when you're banned from banks, when you're having money seized and you're being banned from CPAC and you're a right winger, do you think that makes you less radical? Like, oh yeah, I was wrong, actually. No, talking to Daryl Davis makes you think differently. Talking to me, might give you a different opinion. I'm not trying to change people's minds completely. I'm just saying, like, having a real conversation and somebody like listening to you and at least hearing what you have to say versus banishing you from existence, that's how to actually de-radicalize people. So it's so bad on every level. But I really just wanted to break it down clear, and then I'm going to read a few comments. I'm not saying Trump and everybody are like paid off to be controlled opposition. That's what I'm saying. I'm just saying ideologically, the Republican Party is controlled opposition, whether they know it or not, because all they do is adopt further left-wing stances, socially, fiscally, economically, spiritually, further left stances than the...
Spiritually. He just fucking said spiritually. Dude, fucking, you're an idiot, man. Like, fucking politicians don't have a fucking spiritual case. They just go with what people will vote for. Are you seriously that... Oh, my God. Is he this ignorant? I can't do it anymore. 16 and a half minutes. Congratulations. That's one of the shorter ones. Wow. He's an ignorant prick. Dude. Spiritually. Politics has nothing to do with spiritually. It's supposed to be separate. Literally what's supposed to be separate. It's supposed to be separate. It is supposed to separate. You gotta keep them separated. Jesus, man. Goodbye. I need a palate cleanser. That was gross. What can I get away with? Alright, I'm gonna go see Jimmy Dore tomorrow. I don't care if you're... Oh, nope, that's what I'm gonna do. This is my jam.
Very
This makes me
informative.
happy.
Thank you very much. Now we are open to questions, if there are questions. The gentleman in the back.
Thank you very much. I'm Christopher Ronneberg with the Norwegian newspaper Aftenposten. A question for, or two questions for Ms. Bartlett here. As a journalist, I'm sure you can appreciate getting other impressions than empirical impressions from the ground. When you talk about the Syrian people and what the Syrian people want, how can you quantify that? Do you have any independent surveys where you can actually document that? And secondly,
Oh, his first question, how can you document that? Okay, this is Ava Bartlett, 2016, about Syria and the UN. Our second attempt to push up some things about Syria. And this is, man, she just...
You talk about the corporate media, the Western media, the lies, and all of this. Could you explain what you think might be the agenda from us in the Western media, and why we should lie, why the international organizations on the ground should lie?
Again, this is like my favorite news clip ever. This is just his setup. He gets blasted right in the face. Like,
why we shouldn't believe all these absolutely documentable facts that we see from the ground. These hospitals being bombed, these civilians who are talking about the atrocities that they have been experiencing. How can you...
I'm not saying Syria and Ukraine are similar, but they very well could be. They could be. It's a possibility. And Ava's in Russia right now. She has a lot of great videos on this shit.
You justify calling all of us liars.
I mean, there are certainly honest journalists amongst the very compromised establishment media. Let's start with your second question. So, international organizations on the ground. Tell me which ones are on the ground in eastern Aleppo. Yeah, okay, I'll tell you, there are none. There are none. These organizations are relying on the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, which is based in Coventry, UK, which is one man. They're relying on compromised groups like the White Helmets, which, let's talk about the White Helmets.
She's gonna smoke him so hard. Like, it's... like, she's literally somebody that's been in the city like a dozen times, and he's gonna be like, what kind of confirmation that you have? And he's like, well, first of all, let me say what you don't have. Fucking anything. Anything at all. You have nothing.
The White Helmet.
And that's standard Main Street media. Independent journalists have more information than anchors on the freaking news channels that you're watching. So if you're not getting it from independent media, like Ava Bartlett or Vanessa Beeley, you're missing out.
Were founded in 2013 by a British ex-military officer. They have been funded to the tune of $100 million by the US, UK, and Europe and other states. They purport to be rescuing civilians in eastern Aleppo and Idlib, yet no one in eastern Aleppo has heard of them. And I say no one, bearing in mind that now 95% of these areas of eastern Aleppo are liberated. The White Helmets purport to be neutral, yet they can be found carrying guns and standing on the dead bodies of Syrian soldiers. And their video footage actually contains children that have been recycled in different reports. So you can find a girl named Aya who turns up in a report in month, say, August, and she turns up in the next month in 2 different locations. So they are not credible. The SOHR is not credible. Unnamed activists are not credible. Once or twice, maybe, but every time, not credible. So your sources on the ground, you don't have them. As for your agenda, not your, but the agenda of some corporate media, it is the agenda of regime change. How can the New York Times, I was reading it this morning, or how can Democracy Now!, which I was reading the other day, maintain until this day that this is a civil war in Syria? How can they maintain until this day that that the protests were unarmed and nonviolent until, say, 2012? That is absolutely not true. How can they maintain that the Syrian government is attacking civilians in Aleppo when every person that's coming out of these areas occupied by terrorists is saying the opposite? So that's with regards to your question on lying Western media. How do I quantify the support of the Syrian people? The elections. In 2014, the Syrian people held elections. The voter turnout was 88%, including people in Lebanon, where I was during the elections in Lebanon, which were actually ran for 2 days, extended hours, people walking for kilometers to reach the embassy, including people who flew from their own countries like mine, which has criminally shut the Syrian embassy so that Syrian people have no rights, and including people within Syria who braved a torrent of terrorist mortars and missiles on election day. And yet, voter turnout rate was something like 88%, I believe. And the election, the results were 78, I believe. Okay, I might get the turnout wrong. So the results, 74 participate, 88. Okay. Anyway, the point being, overwhelmingly, the people support President Assad. That's based on elections, based on my own travels. Okay, so that's subjective. But as I said, I've traveled around Syria, talked with people of all faiths, all walks of life, and there are people that want change in the government. We're not pretending they don't want change. Everybody wants change. But in terms of support of the government, the point is they don't see President Assad as the problem. They see the problem as terrorism. They see elements of problems in the system that they have there. But President Assad, they don't see as the problem. They actually overwhelmingly support him. So I'm basing it on their choice in their leader, and I'm basing it on my interactions with people in Syria.
Damn. Go home and take some medication for those third-degree burns. That was Ava Bartlett, again, fantastic journalist. Smoking BBC bullshit news. Alright. So, I want to do this one. This is The Mind Unleashed. And they have an article, The Petrodollar is Collapsing. Saudi Arabia in talks to accept the yuan for oil sales. The petrodollar is the American currency, and how we prop it up. Since we've been off the gold standard since something like the 30s, but really the 70 was the official takeoff completely, where we went on to this petrodollar in the 70s. So that's why we've been funding Saudi Arabia. That's why we're their military. That's why we kiss their ass. And who knows what we did wrong, but Officials from Saudi Arabia and China have been in constant communication regarding the possibility of pricing part of the Gulf nation's oil sales in the yuan rather than the dollar or euros. According to Wall Street Journal, which cited individuals familiar with the situation on Tuesday's story, the two countries have been intermediate negotiations over yuan price oil contracts over a 6-year period. According to reports in the Wall Street Journal, the Saudis are dissatisfied with U.S. policy in the Middle East, particularly with the lack of support for Saudi involvement in the Yemen civil war, but in the Biden administration's efforts to finalize a nuclear deal with Iran. That is ridiculous. They want more help bombing the people of Yemen? Fuck Saudi Arabia. They're going to collapse our dollar because they're a bunch of assholes that want to kill off a country because they're a different type of Muslim than them. That's Saudi Arabia. Fuck Saudi Arabia. According to the report, Saudi's authorities were taken aback by the way in which the United States withdrew its armed personnel from Afghanistan. In short, United States war making in the Middle East and in Africa isn't brutally enough for the Saudis. This is important because as part of a security agreement with the United States government, the Saudis have been obliged to utilize the dollar exclusively for oil transition since the 70s, and nearly 8% of the world oil is traded in the US dollar, hence propping it up, hence giving it its unmarked values. That's my own words, not this article, because, yeah. According to the General Administration of Customs of China, the nation has formed a tighter commercial connection with Saudi in the recent years, and the kingdom supplying 1.76 million barrels of oil per day to the country in 2021. That's a fuck ton of oil. It is possible that even if Saudi Arabia continues to use the dollar to conduct the bulk of its oil trade, the decision to allow the price of oil in the yuan would have an influence on the policies of China's other major oil suppliers such as Russia, Angola, and Iraq. In short, this could produce a cascade effect that bleeds into other countries. It would seem the U.S. supremacy around the world may be coming to an end, and may argue that the petrodollar oil trade is basically the only thing that gives the U.S. fiat money any real value, considering it's basically printed out of thin air. That's exactly what happens. We loan it to the rich loan it to each other, they give each other with. It's just fucking ridiculous. Yeah, I can see it a little better. As the U.S. loses more control over the world in the coming years, we can expect our government to act more irrationally, despite and even more violence. It would seem that for Americans, trading in your fiat currency for precious metals like silver may be a good idea sooner rather than later. And that is their short article there. But they are correct that losing to the yuan in this would be a travesty for our economy, and it's going to be destroying the dollar, and getting away from the dollar might be a good idea at some point. Not having a lot of it in the next 5 years might be a pretty good idea, because its value might, the inflation and the value around it is going to be just as bad as the ruble currently. Alright, so first time, this one was recommended to me by a viewer. They were decent. I haven't seen them since, so I don't know why I'm doing this, but maybe they'll pop in with this. Pretty sure this is a new, yeah. This is somebody I'd never talked to before, so this is a new chatter, but they hung out for the night, and I said I'd give it a shot today. I think that was Saturday or Friday, so maybe they'll pop in. So this is TimeGhost history. This one, in Vladimir Putin's eyes, Ukraine is an artificial creation of Lenin and the Bolsheviks. His current invasion is justified on the premise that Ukraine has no valid claim to sovereignty. In this episode, Indy and Spartacus take that false narrative apart by looking at the long history of Ukraine. So we will check this out. 16 minutes, pretty short, pretty concise. See how well it goes.
Ukraine as a country was invented in 1918, the year after the Bolshevik Revolution broke up the Russian Empire. This is indeed fact.
We've already shown you in a previous episode how that was not, as Russian dictator Vladimir Putin claims, the brainchild of another Vladimir, Lenin, but part of a progression towards modern nationhood that swept the world after the Great War.
So where did the idea come from?
That is what we will look at today. I'm Indy Nidell.
I'm Spartacus Olson.
And this is Into Context, a TimeGhost documentary format where we provide historical context to the headlines of today.
In this set of episodes, the war in Ukraine. Putin's made-up country trope is something that he has been obsessed with for a long time. Visiting a NATO summit in 2008, yes, those were the days, he reportedly remarked to his American counterpart, "You don't understand, George, that Ukraine is not even a state. What is Ukraine? Part of its territories is Eastern Europe, but the greater part is a gift from us."
But like I said in the Crimea episode, every country is made up. Claiming your nation state is natural and your enemy's unnatural comes straight out of the authoritarian handbook. So why are we going over all this again? Well, we want to show that the roots of Ukrainian identity go far deeper than Vladimir Lenin.
Because, yes, Ukraine isn't natural, but neither is Russia and nor is Germany. And just like Russia and Germany, Ukraine wasn't just created by the single decision of a Bolshevik ruler. Indeed, if the people of Ukraine want to live as a sovereign nation, they have deep historical roots to build upon. But first, what is a nation?
People have dedicated entire careers to answering that question. But one of the most widely accepted definitions is by political scientist Benedict Anderson, who describes a nation as an imagined political community. According to Anderson, it is imagined because the members of even the smallest nation will never know most of their fellow members, will never meet them or even hear of them, yet in the minds of each lives the image of their communion.
This doesn't mean that people who believe in nations are fools or that their nations have no basis in real shared bonds. People are linked by language, culture, and ethnicity. But it does mean that nations do not have some natural predetermined basis for existence. Nations are created because people have wittingly or unwittingly decided that they have a common destiny and imagine themselves to have shared values with thousands of people they have never met.
And that belonging to this nation is based on limited criteria of certain shared bonds, all of which can be expanded or limited depending on the circumstances. Most historians agree that the national identity required to found a nation-state only really begins to form in the 19th century and at the active encouragement of intellectuals and politicians. So with that out of the way, what has the long-term development of Ukraine been, both as a place and identity? And how was this history used to justify calls for nationhood in the 19th century?
Ukraine, Russia, and Belarus can all trace their origins to the medieval state of Kievan Rus, existing from around the late 9th century until 1240. Watch our video on historic battles of Kiev to find out why it ended.
People ask me every day, what do I do
Why do you
to look
keep
the way that I
interrupting my
do?
shit? That's probably not what they ask him, huh? Probably not.
But to find Ukraine is mentioned, we have to skip forward a bit to the Hypatian Codex. This codex is possibly compiled at the end of the 13th century. It consists of 3 older chronicles: the Tale of Bygone Years, the Kievan Chronicle, and the Galician Volhynian Chronicle. The texts use Ukraine to mean borderland, with no specific definition of what this exactly is. Sometimes it can mean east of Lublin, other times the Pontic Steppe, or maybe instead the area around Kholm. As you can see, it depends on the context.
A more precise definition emerges when the Grand Duchy of Lithuania expands into the territories of former Kievan Rus at the end of the 14th century. The rulers of Lithuania begin referring to our Ukraine as the lands of Kiev, Volyn, and Podil, a large area that extends across the southern part of the Grand Duchy.
A new era comes for these lands in 1569, when the Grand Duchy of Lithuania and the Kingdom of Poland unite to form the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Most of Lithuania's East Slavic possessions, as the former Kievan principalities are called, are transferred to Poland.
Polish rule means that Polish elites settle in Ukraine and that native Ukrainian elites take on Polish cultural traits. But this widens differences between the peasants and the nobility. Combine this with the introduction of Polish Catholicism in a region where Orthodox Christianity has been the norm, and you have a recipe for deep political division.
Enter the Cossacks. These are armed men living in self-governing communities in the steppes north of the Black Sea and near the Dnipro. Skilled horsemen, they guard the Commonwealth's borderlands against Tatar raids. They have been a political force for decades by this time and frequently clash with Polish authorities. Their numbers have also been swelled by resentful peasants fleeing Polonization elsewhere in Ukrainian lands. That is the very short version of who they are. The Cossacks incite an uprising under the leader Bogdan Khmelnytsky in 1648. This quickly leads to the establishment of a new state, the Cossack Hetmanate. But it's weak and lacks recognition from the great powers. Khmelnytsky knows he needs a stronger ally to protect them. He considers the Ottoman Sultan Mehmed, but eventually turns to the Tsar of Russia, Alexis. Khmelnytsky swears allegiance to the Tsar at the Pereyaslav Council in 1654. The Hetmanate will have self-government within the Tsardom of Russia, and together they will wage war on the Commonwealth.
This is a defining moment in both Ukrainian and Russian history. Ukrainian historiography regards the uprising as a great rebellion against the Polish, whereas Russian historiography regards it as the moment the lost Ukrainians found their way into Russian embrace. Like any national legend, though, it has some skeletons in its closet. Rebelling Cossacks commit brutal atrocities against Jewish and Catholic populations in Ukrainian lands. Sadly, this only makes Ukraine's origin story more typical than not. But as another classic theoretician of nationalism, the 19th century French historian An0maly famously said, national unity is always achieved not only by brutality, but by later people's ability to forget their bloody origins. So where does the idea of Ukraine develop after this?
Well, the war between the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth and the Tsardom of Russia ends in 1667 with the signing of the Treaty of Andrusovo. It splits Ukraine along the Dnipro River. Lands east of the river fall under Russian control as Left Bank Ukraine. Lands west of the river remain under Commonwealth control as Right Bank Ukraine.
And no, our editors haven't made a mistake with the map if that's what you're thinking. Banks of a river are based on how it flows downstream. So for the Dnipro, the left bank is on the right-hand side of the map. Yes, it's confusing. Anyway, it is around this time that a concept emerges of Russia as a union of three branches: Great Russia, Little Russia, and White Russia, denoting the Tsardom, Ukraine, and Belarus, respectively. In many ways, this broad definition of Russian kind of works. There are, of course, still independent-minded inhabitants of Ukraine.
As fiercely committed to their autonomy as ever, the Cossacks even ally with Sweden against their Russian overlords in the Great Northern War from 1700 to 1721.
But that fails, and the Russian Empire that is founded at the war's end actually accepts multiple variations of what Russian can mean culturally and politically. Ukrainians provide many of the Tsar's praised architects, adventurers, and cultural figures. In fact, Ukrainian culture is seen as a bulwark of the empire, providing everything from its legitimization myths to its folk songs to its civil servants.
During the second half of the 18th century, the Russian Empire also annexes Right Bank Ukraine in the partitions of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth in 1772, 1793, and 1795.
Two different traditions of Ukrainian culture are now brought together. The western part is more Polish-oriented, Catholic, and with lords living close to their serfs. The eastern part is more Russian-oriented, Orthodox, and with lords living apart from their serfs.
The division of Ukrainian land and identity is further complicated by the Habsburg Empire seizing Galicia and Volhynia, which contain a significant amount of Ukrainians.
But despite the division, or perhaps because of it, Ukrainians are still caught up in the nationalist surge sweeping Europe in the 19th century. The earliest articulation of Ukrainian patriotism by Russian subjects comes from the University of Kharkiv, where a group of scholars published the Ukrainsky Vestnik in 1816 with the aim of building a literary and historical national canon. They consider Ivan Kotlяревsky's 1798 poem Eneida to be a core component of this canon. A parody of Virgil's Aeneid, Eneida is considered the first work published in modern Ukrainian. It reflects the nostalgia felt by many Ukrainian elites for the hetmanate and days of Cossack chivalry. Another central text is the Historia Rusov, also known as History of Ruthenians or Little Russia, written anonymously at some point around the turn of the 19th century. It is a part historical, part legendary narrative of the development of Ukraine, centered on the themes of natural nationhood, heroic Cossacks, and Ukrainian struggles against Poland and Russia. Despite the work being written in Russian, the narrative of Historia Rusov is full of anti-Muscovite statements and has already begun to inspire Ukrainians to espouse a distinct identity from the Russians.
At this early stage, Tsarist officials don't quite know what to make of Ukrainian nationalism. On the one hand, the Little Russian activists might convince peasants to be more loyal to Great Russia. On the other hand, it might do the complete opposite, causing them to align with the Poles. The possibility that Ukraine might be a separate nation from both Russia and Poland altogether has not come to the Tsars yet. When it does, they will prefer to deny it. And then, in the second half of the 19th century, Moscow begins to narrow that formerly broad definition of Russian. It is the Russian defeat in the Crimean War that triggers a sharp increase in nationalism.
Ukrainian activism comes to be seen as part of a Polish plot to weaken Russia. The Valuev Decree in July 1863 states that the Ukrainian language does not, and cannot exist. Tsar Alexander II then writes the Ems Decree in 1876, banning the publication and import of all new works in the non-existent Ukrainian language. The fortunes of Ukrainian nationalism fare a lot better in Austrian lands, though. Vienna thinks it profitable to support, or at least allow, the development of a distinct Ukrainian vernacular and culture. This is just the general national policy of the Habsburgs anyway, keeping the different groups in its multicultural empire both partly accommodated and diffuse enough from one another to avoid unified dissent.
But it's also a good way to undermine their Russian rivals. Allowing Ukrainian culture to visibly flourish will sow discontent among the Ukrainians under Russian rule. After the Ems Decree in 1876, a lot of Ukrainian national ideas actually carry over from Russian Ukraine to Austrian Ukraine. For example, intellectuals like the Ukrainian historian Mikhailo Hrushevsky moved from Kiev to Lviv and mixed with Galician activists already there. One of the most influential Ukrainian intellectuals, Mikhailo Drahomanov, actually ends up in Geneva after being fired from Kiev University in the wake of the Ems Decree. But from there, his writings travel to Austrian Ukraine to influence a new generation of activists.
But Ukrainian activists soon grow to find the Austrian accommodations inadequate. The friendship is definitely over after the Austrians manipulate the Galician election in 1895 and 1897. Polish nationalists have been advocating for their own nation state with ethnic borders, so why can't Ukrainians? In this vein, Hrushevsky begins publishing his monumental The History of Ukraine Rus in 1895. Its 10 volumes will continue to be published until 1933. Hrushevsky challenges the Russian claim that it has inherited the legacy of the Kievan Rus and instead draws a long historical line from there all the way to his contemporary idea of Ukraine.
Hrushevsky is just one of the many Ukrainians calling for a sovereign nation-state called Ukraine. Many of them unite under the National Democratic Party, who quickly come to dominate the political life of Ukrainians in Galicia at the turn of the century. The Great War then comes in 1914, and like so many national groups within empires, Ukrainians believe their participation will be rewarded once it is over. With the outbreak of the Russian revolutions in 1917, it looks like independence might actually happen in the eastern part of the territories. It then also looks possible in the western part as Austria-Hungary disintegrates at the end of the Great War.
Ukrainian nationalists form fledgling states, but they are not powerful enough to resist the power of the newly ascendant Poles and Bolsheviks. Poland absorbs Galicia and most of Volhynia after defeating the West Ukrainian republics in 1919. The East goes to Bolshevik Russia in 1921 after the Polish-Soviet War, leading to the formation of the Ukrainian Soviet Republic.
And that's the end of the line. We return to the beginning. Was Ukraine an invention by Lenin, as Putin claims?
No, obviously not. Like every other country, Ukraine has developed its own national identity over time and has made its own claim to different parts of its history in order to create a national narrative.
Yep, Ukraine is as unnatural as any other country in the world. That makes Ukraine perfectly natural. We will continue to bring you these into context episodes, and you can be part of that effort by joining the TimeGhost Army at patreon.com or timeghost.tv.
It is the TimeGhost Army that enables us to do what we do.
I will subscribe. Again, I'm an unemployed bartender, so I'm not throwing them money at the moment. Sorry, guys. But that was pretty good. Solid info. Good historic value. I wanted to go on to another story, but my friend sent me a link. He must be seen, and we'll judge it ourselves, I guess. But let's see if it's worth watching. So I saved it on here. Let's check it out. It's another historic video, so hopefully it's good. And we'll see if it has any value.
Advertising on YouTube, I know that making an authentic video with a clear call...
And of course, D-Day from the German perspective. It's old. It's not really... Don't know why we're going to do this today, but I guess we're going to do it.
Are up over at store.armchairhistory.tv and will be gone in just 2 weeks. Consider also picking up a new matte black mug, t-shirt, or one of the few remaining tank pins.
Das Schicksal Deutschlands hängt vom Ausgang der ersten 24 Stunden der Landung ab.
Seriously?
Für die Alliierten...
Jesus Christ, dude. Subtitles? I can't read subtitles. Jesus fucking... I mean, I can, but my face... I literally had face surgery yesterday. I can't be reading subtitles all night. Ugh, stupid fucking video. Alright, we'll do this later. I'll save it again for later. I don't know what... This has no relevance to anything right now, really, and... I don't know. ADD, I guess. Fucking ADD. Alright. So, the last little bit I wanted to actually speak on, because again, my face hurts and I can't talk that much. I need to pop a pain pill and go to bed. But, I want to talk about the bills that are going through right now, guys. Whenever we're distracted by a war, whenever we're getting distracted by the propaganda machine, there's usually stuff going on. Now, I'm not saying we're going to see anything here today. I didn't even take a look. I glanced. I glanced a little bit. So this is supposed to be both here. Okay, so these are things that have passed both chambers, the House and the Senate. So these are things that, so like the first one has gotten to the president. It's not a law yet, but it's gotten to the president. And that is I'll make this bigger so some of you can read it. I can barely read it at this level. Alright. So, the first bill, S-3294, a bill to obtain and direct a placement in the Capitol or the Capitol grounds of a statue to honor Associate Sandra Day O'Connor, blah, 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 Ruth Gator Bingsburg, blah, blah, blah. That is going on. So that's not a big deal. America Completes Act. What's the America Completes? America Completes. That's scary. Whenever they have a nice general name like that, there's usually something horrible behind it. Almost always when you have a nice general name like that, there's something really bad behind it. Specifically, the bill provides funding for the domestic production of semiconductors, requires the federal government to undertake efforts related to cybersecurity, defense procurements, and inflation. Modifies the Department of Homeland Security's activities, including by requiring domestic sources for certain procurements. sets out financial regulations for cannabis-related businesses, and revises other aspects of the financial system. Imposes liability on certain e-commercial platforms for third-party trademark infringement. Changes immigration provisions that apply to, for example, entrepreneurs. Expands premature notification requirements, pre-merger. Revises ocean shipping provisions, requires the small business administrations to issue guidance for child care operations. That is all over the fucking board. How many of those things are going to screw us? Like, seriously. That is all over the board. Ugh. Save the Liberty Theater Act. That's pretty basic. Department of Transportation's Headquarters Act. That's just naming something again. They love naming shit. Designate the federal bill as such and such. Designate the such and such as such and such. The act. The anti-lynching act that everybody knows about. Better Cybercrime Metrics Act. Passed the House and the Senate. So that's the second thing I've seen on cyber. The DOJ must enter into agreement with the National Academy of Sciences to develop a taxonomy for categorizing different types of cybercrime faced by individuals and businesses. The DOJ must establish a category in the National Incident-Based Reporting System for cybercrimes from the federal, state, and local offices. So these are a couple bills that might be bad. And this is the kind of stuff they do. A lot of naming shit. They bury so much naming. Naming. But the few acts that they do, stand up, that sounds like bad. That one's become a law. Suicide training and awareness nationally delivered for Universal Prevention Act. This bill requires the Department of Health and Human Services, when awarding certain grants for priority mental health needs, to give preference to state, tribal, and local education agencies that plan to implement evidence-based suicide awareness and prevention. Evidence-based? So you actually have to have people killing themselves to fucking fund them? Alright, well, like I said, so I just want to go over this real quick. This site is interesting. And, like what they're doing right now during a war is usually bad stuff. So congress.gov, you can literally search what bills they're doing and at what level they're at. And I was just going over the stuff that's gone through the House and Senate, because the shit that they push through with bipartisan support during a war is usually the worst shit they could possibly do. And that America's Competes Act was all over the fucking board, all over the place. And has nothing to do with competes. Like, so little of it had. That's a 10 amendment bullshit bill right there. So that's the kind of stuff they do while we're fighting over a war, or blinded by the war, blinded by the light, wrapped up like a douche in the ruler in the night. All right, I wanted to check this out real quick. Again, another thing suggested by YouTube that caught my eye. Governor Hogan on signing redraw Congress districts maps into law for Maryland. And I just wanted to hear a governor rationalize his redistricting a map, because that kind of shit entertains me. And you can just, I have nothing to do with Maryland. I don't really know anybody in Maryland, but it's an interesting topic when they redistrict shit, right? Like, the way they do it.
To be redrawn by the court. This is something that we've been focused on for 8 years. It's a tremendous victory for democracy and for free and fair elections in Maryland. When these maps came out in December, I said they were unconstitutional and violated the law. The courts agreed, described it as extreme partisan gerrymandering and a clear violation of the Constitution, ordered the legislature.
So we blocked the gerrymandering? Good job. Good job. Finally somebody did something right. They blocked some gerrymandering. That is fantastic. That is good news.
To go back and draw new maps, which they did. Now, they weren't, in my opinion, as good as the ones drawn by the Citizen Commission, and we shouldn't have wasted so much time, but they are a huge improvement, and it's a huge victory. The plaintiffs agreed to drop their appeal. There was an attempt to say we will draw new maps, but we still want to go back to the gerrymandered unconstitutional maps, and we'll take it to another court. They've decided to drop those attempts, and now it's the law of the land. And I want to just thank all of the people who participated in the Citizens Commission. I want to thank all the Republicans and Democrats who really were fighting for fair maps. I think gerrymandering is a cancer on our democracy, regardless of which party does it. Well, this was the first number of maps have been thrown out in other states around the country. Republican maps, this is the first time in the United States that a set of Democratic maps have been thrown out for the same reason. With that, I'd be happy to take some questions.
So I just dropped the link in YouTube for my Twitch stream. My last video of the night I can't play on YouTube. I'll get taken down. I already know that. It's like a 15-minute clip. So if you want to join me for the last 15 minutes after this, that's where we'll be going to. If you want to start figuring out or whatever. But I'm doing this video, and then I'm going over to Twitch for the last of the night. That's all I'm doing with my face being like this. But I'll be live streaming on Twitch with my Jimmy Dore show tomorrow. I'll be hitting that up on like probably the opening bar and the opening going into the place and everything. I'll be doing that like hour and a half or so, and then I'll be streaming right after I get home from the show. So that'll be tomorrow. Jimmy Dore pre-show, Jimmy Dore post-show. But again, that's both on the pre-show will only be on Twitch. The post-show will be on both shows around 11 midnight like usual.
With this decision to drop these appeals, does this basically leave the door open in 10 years to fight these battles again?
Well, so I'm glad you brought that up because it's probably what I forgot to mention in my opening remarks. This is a huge win for democracy and for improvement in the process, and now we're going to have fair maps and fair elections in this election cycle. But we still have a piece of legislation before the legislature that we've been attempting to get passed for 8 years, which would fix this process permanently, so not just for the next 10 years, but forever, so that they couldn't go back and continue to cheat and break the Constitution the next time. And so there's, they acted pretty quickly on these maps in just a matter of days. I'm not sure why they can't act on that legislation just as fast and get that done before the session's over with.
I want to ask you about the fix moving forward.
I think the way to move forward is, I think, first of all, when you're found to have violated the law, hopefully that, and you had to go back and redraw the maps, that's going to fix it for the next decade. But I think we do need to go back and fix the flawed process.
You need to use you as an example, too, and get some other states fixed. There's a lot of states that are completely fucked on this situation, and it's not just Maryland. I mean, North Carolina is one of the worst. I live there. Their districts look like freaking jigsaw puzzles.
This is something that's wrong no matter who does it. They've been doing it for decades. I'm the first one to try to do something about it. We've been fighting for 8 years, and it's great to finally have gotten that done before we leave. But I still want them to pass the bill so that 10 years from now they won't go back to their same old ways of violating the Constitution.
Governor Hogan, on that bill, on Friday, the Senate President hinted that he was talking, negotiating about the map. Were there discussions about them moving that piece of legislation forward before the session ends?
Yeah, I'd rather not get into all the details of all the discussions that we're having with the presiding officers, but I mean, it was a great, we did have discussions, and them agreeing to drop the appeal. There was an attempt to go back to the gerrymandered maps, and that was a huge victory to get them to back off of that and to agree that we would sign this into law.
On that, Governor, did the Attorney General know that you would sign this map if they withdrew?
We were in discussions with the Attorney General, who was the one filing the appeal. So it was with the presiding officers and the Attorney General, and we all came to an agreement that it was something they should not pursue, throwing out the judge's order.
Governor, Orlando said that you prefer the citizens map, but do you feel that this map is fair as it relates to?
This map is a huge step in the right direction. It's not perfect, and there's still some issues that I think could be corrected, but it's miles away from the really incredibly gerrymandered map that was thrown out by the court.
Governor, you have indicated that this is one of the items that you had on your agenda since you took office. Can you talk about what the legacy of all this means as people go back and look at what you did as governor?
Well, I mean, it's been a pretty good week. I mean, we just passed $2 billion in tax cuts, and I've been talking about the retirement tax cut since 2014, and we were successful at that. I've been talking about trying to fix the broken process so that we could have free and fair elections, and we stopped the gerrymandering, which was described as the worst in America. And we've now done that to a certain extent, but I still want that bill passed. But we've gotten a lot done, and I just want to thank, although we don't always agree, we have, in many cases, come together with the leaders of both houses and gotten things done. We did it with the Relief Act last year. We did it with the retirement tax elimination this year, and reluctantly, with the help of the court, we've also got them to move forward on the fair maps. Right. Yeah, it's not an appeal. It's on the legislative maps. The process actually goes straight to the Court of Appeals. It doesn't stop at the Circuit Court. I believe that Judge Wilner is supposed to come up with his preliminary findings. They appointed a master, a retired judge, who's been doing all the fact finding, and I think he's supposed to come out with his report tomorrow. And then the Court of Appeals still has to act on that. So we're hopeful. Look, the exact same process was done in both cases. It was a back room, in secret, behind closed doors, by the Democratic caucus, pushing through these maps. The same intent was to protect the incumbents and to maintain their large majorities. So I believe hopefully we're going to be successful there, but it's a whole different set of legal issues in a different court. And so we're hopeful, but that one, you're right, you can't move forward because nobody knows what legislative districts they're in yet.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The Warren.
Don't remember hitting that. Well, that being said, gonna have to go ahead and say goodnight to YouTube because oddly enough, the shows that from YouTube that I've been playing, I can't show on YouTube. It's like ironic as shit, right?
People ask.
But yeah. I actually can't play this next clip on YouTube without getting it taken off because it's a YouTube video that is highly whatever. So I'll be going to just Twitch from the rest of the night. A couple more things to go, a little bit longer. Please come and join me over there. I'd love for you to join me on Twitch. It censors me less over there. I have a better chance of actually keeping the stream going over there than on here. Because I think I'm going to get striked out of this place by just speaking the truth, speaking what I see, and not believing the mainstream media. I'm still going to get somehow censored. So, going over to Twitch. Good night. Thank you for joining me. Either way, if you don't come over, keep woke. Don't believe the bullshit. And thanks for hanging out.